From the moment Boruto debuted, fans have waited eagerly for the time skip, and after 7 long years, it is here at last. That time period where tensions between Boruto and Kawaki get so nuclear that it results in the village being destroyed. As you would expect, time skips mean that there are training arcs, power levels are rising, and there's tons of character development, and Two Blue Vortex, it is full of that, and it starts out with his foot on the gas. However, since this is a sequel to Boruto Part 1, I would recommend watching the Boruto Part 1 full story video. That is a major in-depth video of Boruto Part 1 that covers all the story arcs, the themes, and it fills in gaps from the official source guides that just reading the free chapters on Viz Media will not give you the information. Also, since Boruto Two Blue Vortex is still ongoing, I can't replicate that style of video for obvious reasons, so consider these to be arc videos that are focused on the core story, and when Part 2 ends and we have the whole picture, we'll do the mega breakdown video like we did for Part 1. So without further ado, let's get into the story. So the chapter opens up with the full color spread of Sarada in her new time skip design, and she's pissed off as she's standing before the Hokage office doors, and when she goes inside of them, she absolutely lets Shikamaru have it, and we learn that she's trying to convince Shikamaru that he's wrong about Boruto. Shikamaru isn't just acting as Hokage right now, he's wearing the cloak, and Konohamaru's serving as his advisor, and he's even called Shikamaru Lord 8th, and he tells Sarada that Sasuke and Boruto, they're the ones who crossed the line. They killed the Hokage. They tried to kill the son of the Hokage, and therefore they need to be punished with no exceptions. Sarada tries to reason with Shikamaru, but Konohamaru tells her they have too much proof, mainly Ada's Senrigan confirming the truth, and Ada tries to turn it around by saying, given the circumstances, why wouldn't Boruto have run away? Because there's an execution order and nobody would listen to him. Shikamaru says his orders are final, and he orders her to return to her mission, which leads to Sarada being told by Shikamaru that if she continues down this path, she will never be Hokage, and at that point, Sarada stops throwing punches, and she says that her father is a traitor like Boruto, and her Uchiha crest on her back is shown to Shikamaru, and she says that once upon a time, Sasuke broke numerous laws, but Naruto still left the village to bring him back, and that reasons like that are why Sarada looked up to Naruto as the 7th Hokage, pretty much telling him that she does not acknowledge Shikamaru as Hokage. We then shift over to Kawaki visiting the unconscious Naruto and Hinata in the time-space dimension of the Daikokuden, where we see its new design before we shift over to Sarada and Sumire speaking about the effects of the Omnipotence, which leads us learning about more of what happened following the events of Boruto Chapter 80. Sarada tells us that at the start, everyone was questioning if Kawaki was really born in the village. Why was he a cyborg like the other car enters? We just see what Sasuke told us was going to be the case in Chapter 80. Sasuke, upon learning the truth, had to actively fight to suppress the shinjutsu that was telling him to overlook things, and he remarked how scared he was of his own memories, now being unable to actually trust them. Sasuke said as more time passed, things that should bother him didn't bother him, and we see the effect on full display here. People are no longer questioning if Kawaki is Naruto's son, they just accept it. This leads to Sarada and Sumire speaking directly to Ada, and she tells him that this is a power that, while she now knows what it is, she can't control it, and it's only something that happened because Kawaki made a wish, basically a perfect storm. She was desperate to be of use to Kawaki, and Kawaki made the wish to be Naruto's son instead of Boruto, which resulted in everyone's memories of them being inverted. Boruto is now Kawaki, Kawaki is now Boruto. Ada warns them that if they put too much focus and fuss on this, that this will lead to people questioning them, and that instead they should focus on overriding a new memory instead of trying to turn things back the way they used to be. But Ada says it comes with danger, and then she begins to start questioning them herself. She explains it doesn't work on Damon because he's her blood relative, which then leads her to wonder why or if they are even immune to the shinjutsu that Ada has that allows her to charm and control, which leads to Sarada freezing up and Sumire recalling Shikamaru's words to not let on that they were immune because Damon would kill them, and she makes quick work to reassure Ada that they are indeed under her control. We then shift over to Kawaki and Mitsuki, with Mitsuki telling Kawaki to ease up on his overprotectiveness, and Mitsuki says that they have to be on guard because Boruto can erase his chakra, but Kawaki reveals his powers make that pointless now. He'll know when Boruto gets to the village, specifically saying Boruto won't be able to fool his eyes the way he can fool a sensory team. When Mitsuki talks of killing Boruto, Kawaki doesn't object and tells Mitsuki to stop acting like his stalker, and then proceeds to take to the air because they've been alerted that Code's claw marks have been found in the village. While Kawaki is zipping through the air, Mitsuki begins to question if Kawaki is indeed the sunlight that lights up his moon. A clear nod that Mitsuki is noticing the darkness in Kawaki versus the light that Boruto naturally gave off, making Mitsuki one of our candidates to eventually see reason. We then shift over to Himawari training with Team 10, fighting against Chocho, hitting her with enough force to put her on the defensive, and we see a really cool sequence where Himawari jumps on top of Chocho's fist. She then jumps into the air and throws the shuriken at Chocho in a panel that looks like it could have been drawn from Dragon Ball's manga, and we see the improved panel and switch over to Chocho expanding in size as the shuriken races towards her, and she blows them away with her increased lung capacity, and then at the same time uses the Akimichi clan's human boulder jutsu to get Himawari to jump into the air, all while setting up a trap with the expansion jutsu to grab Himawari mid-air, easily defeating her like an experienced Street Fighter player does when they're playing someone who's constantly jumping and mashing buttons randomly. Just like that player gets folded up easily, it's the same thing here. However, the fact that Himawari is training and getting praise from Shikadai and Chocho for her skills shows that Naruto's youngest child is well on her way to becoming a splendid shinobi herself, and when she's asked why she wants to become a strong shinobi, she says that she wants to help Boruto, and she knows that she'll be scolded by the village for it. However, she doesn't say this because she's immune to the shinjutsu. She is affected by it. She just has her father's big heart. Just as Naruto forgave Obito, you know, the guy who killed Naruto's parents, Himawari forgives Boruto for the same thing, and we clearly see that she has been affected because her memory shows that Boruto saved her and Naruto, a reference to the Delta fight when Kawaki saved her and Naruto. And she says that someone like that couldn't have killed her father, and she goes a step further and says she can feel it that her father's alive somewhere, which is a side note on top of the fact that while she's saying this, not only does she have the sunflower shirt, but she also has a collar on her neck with the sunflower design, which again, the sunflower is a nod to Himawari's name pun being sunflower, and the fact that in Naruto chapter 700 she was shown putting sunflowers on Neji's grave. I'm voting for Himawari for the best design in time skip Boruto right now. We then shift over to Kawaki awakening his dojutsu to shrink the claw marks, and we see Kawaki's dojutsus fully manifested into the 8 spokes of the Dharma wheel, which means that he should have all of Ishiki's powers at his disposal, including what I strongly believe are more powers, which I covered in another video. Ishiki's 8 potential dojutsu abilities will shock you. However, as Kawaki watches the scene, Kawaki grabs onto one of the Chunin by the neck and reveals that there's a claw mark on him, and immediately shrinks it and gets in contact with Shikamaru, telling him the urgency of the situation, which interestingly enough, Shikamaru is referred to by Kawaki as Shika-san, showing a huge amount of comfort and respect, which is huge considering where these two were in part 1, where Shikamaru told Naruto to lock up Kawaki, and before the Shinjutsu happened, Shikamaru was leading execution squad to kill Kawaki. Him referring to Shikamaru as San is huge, given that that word means honorable mister. Kawaki redemption arc coming soon? Maybe, just something to keep your eyes on. It's then that we see the claw grinds pop up out of one of the citizens and begin going on the rampage. The sensory unit begins to immediately relay the information. Innocent people and shinobi are getting attacked by the claw grinds. It's then that everyone realizes there are multiple claw grinds in the village. Konohamaru and Shikamaru realize that he's taking a page out of Pain's book, using numbers to cause a distraction. Shikamaru's looking out the window, giving orders to evacuate the villagers, while simultaneously getting all capable shinobi onto the battlefield, showing that quick thinking, or at the very least, Shikamaru has actually planned for what to do in the event of an invasion. It's then that Kawaki shows up and one-shots one of the claw grinds by transforming his arm into ninja tech, and he starts telling civilians to listen to the shinobi and leave the area. However, not to be outdone, Sarada comes in with a dynamic dropkick of her own into one of the claw grinds that is invisible pain from the attack, and Sarada one-shots that 10-tailed soldier with that single kick, showing us just how strong she's gotten. It's even more impressive when you realize that as the 10-tailed soldiers began to start popping up in her area, she never once cuts on her Sharingan, meaning she felt that her base was enough to handle the fight and that she didn't need the Sharingan Eye of Insight in order to handle this threat, which means somewhere the Boruto Kages are in the mud because Sarada's leveled up past them. However, before Sarada can begin fighting, Code pops up out of one of the claw grinds and demands to know where Boruto is. Sarada reveals to us that it's been 3 years since Boruto left, and Code reveals to us as an audience that he's been hunting down Boruto for 2 years, and based on the scar that Code has over his eye, either Boruto or Sasuke took his eye at some point. Code tells us that he's planning to make Sarada scream loud enough for Boruto to hear it, which is going to be really interesting because this is a classic classic example of deranged kanji. Just from the multiple translations we have here, this is a clear sign of it. There's a sexual undertone here. One translation says cry in a good voice so it can reach Boruto. Luana's translation on Twitter says scream well so he can listen properly, he being Boruto, which even she says when she translated that this was disgusting. Getting back to the chapter itself, Boruto steps in and literally steps on Code's face and has his sword ready to draw. Code went from getting his back stepped on by Damon in their fight to now getting Boruto stepping on his face. Boruto tells Code, with words like that, no wonder girls are disgusted by you, obviously a reference to Ada and Sarada. Code tries to attack Boruto, who easily dodges the attack, and as he does so, Kawaki and the sensory team are alerted, and Shikamaru gives the order to deal with Code first and then worry about Boruto. Meanwhile, Boruto is standing in front of Sarada with his sword drawn, ready for battle with Code and the Ten-Tailed soldiers, and we see that Kawaki has appeared and is ready to engage with Boruto in battle as well. What the story accomplishes early on is that it teaches us that even though the world views Naruto as being dead, the world itself still moves on. It doesn't just pause because you died. However, Sarada represents that Naruto's legacy is still being carried on by a new generation, but Shikamaru represents the other side of trauma, which is reverting back to past habits. In his case, the cold, hard logic that once said that Sasuke's Akatsuki, so we have to kill him. He's applying that same logic now to Boruto and Sasuke being traitors to Konoha. He is not Naruto, who didn't operate solely off of logic. He operated under the belief that everyone could be redeemed. Cold, hard logic says that innocent people, they don't run away, which we as the audience know that he is incorrect in his belief here. That is the conflict. Boruto's trying to save people who want to kill him and do not believe he did not kill the 7th Hokage, even though there are signs that something is not right, especially now that Boruto has returned and he and Code appear to be at odds with one another. And Boruto, someone who's supposed to hate Konoha because Omnipotence switched everyone's memories of Boruto and Kawaki, Boruto's now trying to save the village when he should have no attachment to it because his only attachment was Naruto. And that, my friends, is the scary part of Omnipotence. Anything that directly goes against the effects of Omnipotence, it forces you to look past any logical loopholes and just accept what it is that you're seeing. And in this case, it's forcing Shikamaru to accept, hey, Boruto is not that guy who actually cares for Konoha. He is a Naruto-obsessed fanboy who should have no attachment to the village. And at the true heart of all of this is the fact that despite Shikamaru not knowing what's going on, Boruto is trying to keep the village's best interests at heart. And in the whole background of all of this, Sarada and Sumire are both still carrying out the mission that Shikamaru gave to them, and they are operating while trying to simultaneously prove Boruto's innocence and find a way to reverse Omnipotence, but they're having to do so while trying to pretend that they are under the effects of Ada's omnipotence, in particular her ability to control hearts, and they have to prevent Damon from ever getting suspicious, because if Damon ever figures out that they are not affected by omnipotence, Damon will kill them. And so you have an extra layer of tension and conflict brewing beneath the surface. Because unlike Boruto, who can do all these crazy jutsu and might stand a chance against Damon, Sarada and Sumire, they stand absolutely no chance. They're supposed to be like Konohamaru, who is completely infatuated with Ada to the point that he becomes brainless mush in her presence. And so they're having to walk a very tight rope. And as all of this is going on, you have Sarada, who is trying to stand next to Boruto publicly. And she has spent the last 3 years trying to raise the alarm bells. But because of what we've seen, it is falling on deaf ears. Even though there are some people who are beginning to suspect that something's not right. But due to how omnipotence works, it forces you to accept any things that seem out of place. And Kawaki has been the beneficiary of all of that. And Sarada's predicament becomes even more worse. Like Momoshiki warned that people immune to omnipotence would suffer, Sarada gave up her father. Now her father is being hunted down for assisting the Hokage killer in escaping, and she is also basically flushing her dream of being Hokage down the toilet, because they are not going to appoint someone, as things stand right now, who is publicly standing up for the guy who killed the 7th Hokage, someone who isn't just a symbol as being a Kage, but Naruto himself represents greater hope for the shinobi world. He is the reason why the world for so long has been at peace with one another. Her standing up for Boruto, in spite of the charges against Boruto being as strong as they are, effectively means until this is reversed, she can never become Hokage. And now with the return of Boruto Uzumaki, things have gotten way more complicated. Now with chapter 2, it continues to just keep placing Sarada in a very uncomfortable situation because Boruto has showed up and this threat of Code is there. Kawaki is attempting to get to the battlefield in order to confront both of them, and you also have Code's claw grimes that are attacking the village. And while all of this is going on, you have no update on where Sasuke is, and that is the major question that everyone has been asking because we don't know where Sasuke is, Boruto's alleged co-conspirator. So right away, we see the tone being set for this chapter where it's made clear that the darker tone of Boruto Part 2 is not a temporary thing. This is here to stay. Boruto's conversation with Code early on in the chapter makes that much clear because we see a different side of Boruto than what we've seen in the past, where he was more happy-go-lucky and very sarcastic. But in Boruto Naruto Next Generations, Boruto lived a more posh life for most of the time, and he still had that bright spirit even after Momoshiki was somebody he found out was inside of him. However, this Boruto right now in Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, he is colder, he is darker, he is more serious, and Sarada notices it right away as Boruto's telling Code to remove the Ten-Tailed soldiers out of the village before Boruto kills Code. Boruto's dark tone might have had Code laughing in disbelief, thinking that Boruto was bluffing, but Sarada's worried expression makes it clear because she knows Boruto's not bluffing and is dead serious, and that is something we as readers need to take really important note of because there's importance behind this. The Boruto who is giving Code the ultimatum to leave the village or get killed by my hands is a stark difference to the old Boruto. The old Boruto made it a point not to kill people. He was every bit the child who was a product of growing up in a life of luxury and abundance, wanting nothing more than to eat Thunder Burgers whenever he saw fit to waste his money earned from missions, and basically playing ninja where he might have to slapbox some people like Shojoji, but Boruto never actually killed them. Even with someone like Ao who killed Mujino right in front of Boruto, when Boruto had the chance to kill Ao, he set the screwdriver down next to him and he spared his life. That's not this Boruto. He has no problems or qualms killing, which means the last 3 years of Boruto have been nothing short of a nightmare where he's been looking over his shoulders day and night, hiding from the Konoha Anbu Black Ops, hiding from the Black Ops from other hidden villages, and losing sleep wondering if Code's claw grimes were even getting closer to his location. It's for that reason that Sarada tries to speak to Boruto, but Boruto cuts off, saying that there are still people who are in need of help evacuating the village, and Boruto refuses to make eye contact with Sarada, telling her only to survive, which that's our first major sign of how heavy of a burden Boruto has been carrying around these last few years. He sees Sarada for the first time in 3 years, and the main message he gives her is to survive. Now compare that to Naruto when he first saw Sakura after 2.5 years, and you see the tone change, albeit these are different circumstances, but this Boruto has gone through more in 3 years than Naruto did over the 2.5 years, which is why he's more jaded, and being the typical shonen antagonist that he is, Code is making the mistake of believing the Boruto before him was the same scared little boy he was hunting down during the time skip. Something has changed inside of Boruto, and the chapter has hinted at what exactly this is and why Boruto is in such an urgent rush to stop Code and have him destroy the claw grimes and allow Boruto to destroy the main body of the Ten-Tails. But we'll touch on that in a bit because there's something I do think people are overlooking when it comes to this information here. What we see next in the chapter is that Masashi Kishimoto is allowing Code's claw grimes to be used as a benchmark to show us how strong the different members of Boruto's generation have gotten during the 3-year time skip, and it's a good focus on the members of Team 10 who are using combination attacks to handle the Ten-Tailed soldiers, using so much coordination that Himawari is left stunned by the level of teamwork that she's able to see them use. But with this new generation, we're seeing a common theme of them having their guard lowered is still an ongoing thing. Just like if you read Boruto Naruto Next Generations very closely, 12-year-old Boruto had to be told several times to keep his guard up, where Naruto in the sparring match with Boruto in the early part of the Vessel arc showed exactly this, where Naruto distracted Boruto with this ninja tech hand that absorbed Boruto's water release. Also, Naruto could use body flicker to get behind Boruto and kick him onto the ground, and we saw Ao get the drop on Boruto twice for having his guard lowered, once on the train when he put the screwdriver on his neck, and the second time when Konohamaru had to take a laser beam from the drone when Boruto was off guard during the fight with Ao. We see that members of Boruto's generation, while they're clearly strong and they're very skilled, their sense of battle awareness is still lacking, just as Boruto's was in part 1, and just like how Naruto's was at times in Naruto part 1. A classic example being how Sakura in the manga, when Zabuza throws his execution blade, Sakura has to save Naruto from getting killed. But unlike Boruto and unlike Naruto, they have not been in constant life or death situations, in particular Boruto, for the last 3 years of this actual manga. Chocho is shown being off guard because the claw grimes are able to teleport out of each other's bodies, and this leads to Chocho almost getting tagged by the Ten-Tailed Soldier before Inojin grabs hold of her and takes it high up into the sky. However, Inojin isn't any better than Chocho because unlike his father Sai, who would have already had another plan of attack in place for the Ten-Tailed Soldier, he was taken into the air, like say taken into the air and then releasing it and then following it up with the Super Beast scroll in order to chase it down through the air and seal it. Inojin just grabs hold of this thing by the arms, and he has the nerve to patronize Chocho, telling her not to lower her guard when he's guilty of doing the same thing. That Ten-Tailed Soldier has a tail, and the tail destroys Inojin's Eek Bird, and it's there that we see why Ino and Sai were getting onto Inojin several times in the anime for his laid-back nature, because that's not something that either one of them would have done, especially Sai. But again, it's a different era. Sai grew up in an era where the Five Nations are in open Cold War. He was raised in the Anbu Black Ops as a part of Danzo's route, where only the best of the best survived and their battle instincts were sharpened into a blade to be used at Danzo's discretion for missions too dark to be put on the official books of the Leaf Village. Compared to Inojin's soft upbringing, Sai would have handled this situation different, and it's because of Inojin's error that he puts himself and Himawari in harm's way. But thankfully for them, Kawaki is the one who shows up ready to save the day. However, there's a catch. Kawaki might have saved them, but he didn't do it out the kindness of his heart or any loyalty to them, not the way that Boruto would have done that situation. His movements and actions, they were as cold and calculated as they were in Boruto Part 1. Most importantly, he knows that despite being the son of Naruto in the eyes of others, he doesn't want the familiarity that comes with that title, which is why when Himawari called him Big Brother, Kawaki gives her a disgusted look of annoyance and he tells her, "Don't call me that," making a point to say that he's done this before in the past, telling her not to do that. So this is a repeat thing, which is another sign of dramatic irony where we as the audience know something that the characters in universe don't know. We know that Kawaki isn't Naruto's son, but Himawari doesn't know that. It's only natural for her to call Kawaki Big Brother because before the Shinjutsu took place, that's the relationship she had with Boruto. Boruto was the overprotective big brother who got upset on her behalf when Naruto sent a shadow clone to her birthday. So it's only natural now that her memories of Boruto and Kawaki have been reversed that she thinks that Kawaki is her protective big brother who she admires, the very same big brother who she told Hinata in the Boruto manga that she wanted to become a ninja in order to assist Boruto one day. After Hinata's been made aware that Kawaki has killed Boruto, the hurt look on Himawari's face right there, it says it all. She's been crushed by the words coming out of Kawaki's mouth, and Kawaki, being the cold-hearted individual he is, he could care less, but because he's only tolerating her due to the fact that she's Naruto's youngest daughter. What we're seeing right here is what the story of Boruto 2 Blue Vortex is truly about at its heart. If Boruto Naruto Next Generations was a story of father and son, and the son's story was about a spoiled boy who had everything taken away from him, Boruto 2 Blue Vortex is the story of a boy in Boruto who lost everything he took for granted and is slowly regaining it, while Kawaki represents the person who went from having nothing to having everything and is slowly losing it all because he's like that lottery ticket winner who wins billions because he hits the jackpot and he goes broke a few years later because money doesn't change you or your habits, it just highlights what's already there. And so too does love to an extent when you think about it. When someone like Kawaki receives a ton of love when it's not something that they're used to, they don't know how to handle it and they eventually end up pushing people away. Kawaki's love for Naruto, it turned into obsession because he didn't know how to handle a father's love. If you go back to the anime canon episode where Kawaki's origin story is told, we saw what type of a father he had. His father sold Najigen. His father was beating him with alcohol bottles. He didn't know how to handle having Naruto's fatherly love actually given to him, and so he eventually pushed Naruto away to a point where Hinata slapped Kawaki and Naruto tells Kawaki, "Hey, if you're gonna kill my son, you gotta kill me first." Right now, Kawaki is pushing away Himawari and and Mitsuki based on the actions of the last 2 chapters. He's pushing them back into the waiting arms of Boruto. However, what we also see here is that Kawaki's battle sense has gotten rusty during these last 3 years as well, because he's caught off guard by the claw grime that has the Rinnegan, and he's been knocked into the ground, which is a pretty big deal when you consider just how strong the Rinnegan makes someone. And off guard Kawaki getting his face stomped into the ground, it isn't too crazy because number one, he was off guard without his dojutsu active and he can't see 360 degrees, but most importantly, these claw grimes are stronger than they're getting credit for with the actual fandom itself. When we look at the claw grimes, they aren't too different than concepts we had explored in the 72 volumes of Naruto's manga. There's actually quite a bit of overlap. Biju's chakra is stronger when it's still inside of a Jinchuriki, and the 2 chakras merge together inside of a human body and grow, bringing out more power than either could do on their own. Code took the chakra of the 10 tails and broke it apart into the claw grimes into a humanoid body and inserted his own chakra into it on top of that, effectively serving the same purpose that the hidden villages did when they sealed part of the 10 tails into a Jinchuriki by sealing the 1 tails into someone like Gar and working your way all up to the ladder where you have Naruto getting Kurama sealed inside of him. These claw grimes have a portion of the 10 tails chakra. They have Code's chakra, and it's in a humanoid body where the chakra will grow. But now you have to add in the Rinnegan and you get another boost. If you'll recall, Obito, when he tells Sakura that she needs to destroy his Rinnegan, he says that just 1 Rinnegan was enough, that the power nearly drove him insane because he couldn't handle the chakra of the Rinnegan even when the body was made up of half of Hashirama cells. Nagato, being an Uzumaki, was able to handle both Rinnegan at the same time, but he also had an enormous chakra pool even for an Uzumaki, and he had a strong life force to counterbalance it. In both cases, Nagato and Obito were using another person's Rinnegan that was not their eye, but these 10-tail soldiers are using their own Rinnegan right now since they're made out of the chakra of the original body of the 10-tails. However, as we see in the chapter, Kawaki is more than capable enough on his own to deal with the claw grime that has the Rinnegan, because when Shikadai catches it with the Shadow Strangle Jutsu, Kawaki cuts his Karma Seal on and he blows the claw grime apart using his ninja tech. But what I find interesting about this is that when we contrast this to Boruto, Kawaki, you can argue, he's gotten rusty, even though he's clearly gotten more accustomed to his Otsutsuki powers. Because if you look at it logically, he was already strong enough that he could handle Boruto. He's literally already killed him once before. And with his master Ishiki's dojutsu, that is probably enough to give him the edge over killing Code. Ishiki's dojutsu and karma abilities are basically what Kekkei Genkai were in the Naruto manga, where you have 2 evenly matched fighters and stats go at it in battle, but one of them has a Kekkei Genkai, like say Ice Release or the Byakugan or the Sharingan. Then the person who has the Kekkei Genkai, they're most likely to win the fight. If Kawaki versus Code were equal stats, Kawaki would win due to having Ishiki's dojutsu abilities and having a true karma, which that in itself is going to be interesting. While Kawaki is definitely set on destroying the claw grimes, what this one moment showed us is that he is not invincible. Kawaki can be had, and I think that that was something very important for Boruto 2 Blue Vortex to establish, because if we're being honest, at the end of Boruto Naruto Next Generations, Kawaki, even with him having issues of using Ishiki's powers too long, it was understood he just awakened that power. Everyone expected him to be able to manage it better in the time skip, so you had to show that Kawaki still has some flaws. So I thought that this was a smart decision. So on the other hand, when we compare this to Boruto, Boruto's arguably on a different level. Despite having a similar issue with the claw grind, fighting with the ability to teleport through each other, he's literally got 1 eye to begin with. Despite this, Boruto's using swordplay that I totally appreciate as a Rurouni Kenshin fan, because he's doing what Kenshin Himawari did in the Rurouni Kenshin series, which is constantly sheathing and unsheathing his sword for quick sword strikes that are just as fast as they are calculated. Bodies are beginning to drop around Boruto, including slicing the upper half of one of the claw grimes, and upon seeing this, Code realizes that he might have underestimated Boruto because he's clearly leveled up, yet despite this, Code is refusing to listen to Boruto. He's too blinded by his own revenge and his blind worship of Ishiki that he won't listen to anything Boruto's telling him in this moment, despite Boruto showing that he can back up his earlier threat to Code because he easily took out the claw grimes without using karma. That's where things get super interesting here, and this is where we have signs of a major plot point that Kishimoto's cooking up with the pen right now. Boruto tells Code that he's wrong about several things. These claw grimes are not what he thinks they are, and that it's in his best interest to destroy them as soon as possible or else Code will regret it, going so far as to say that Code has changed the Ten Tails itself. Not only that, but he warns Code that a calamity is coming that Code is bringing about because his actions and he doesn't realize what he set in motion. This is where you and I have to cut on our handy dandy Sharingan because it's time to break down what he's actually saying here. The first thing is that Boruto's statement is implying that there's a true terror coming, a terror that Boruto calls the worst possible outcome. It's more than just having a chakra fruit harvested. Boruto has Momoshiki's Karma Seal. That means he not only gets access to Momoshiki's power, but if he's mastered Karma, he also has access to Momoshiki's knowledge. Momoshiki is someone who has harvested thousands of planets, consumed several chakra fruits before he came to Earth. If anyone knows the truth about the Ten Tails, it will be Momoshiki. And the story wants you to believe that potentially has Boruto seen something, because at the end of Boruto Naruto Next Generations, he was seeing all these fragmented possible futures. However, this is a classic example of the story setting up a misdirect because Boruto is getting help. However, it is not from Momoshiki's power, but the story is making you zero in. Is this possibly what is making Boruto think something is happening? And it's very brilliantly using the threat of the Ten Tails, and it is just building on our past familiar knowledge of how Hagoromo made the tailed beasts and how the tailed beasts were developing their own personalities and showing that even though they are chakra, they still are their own unique people. They can evolve. And so the story is making you realize through Boruto's words that potentially something like this has happened, only on the opposite spectrum. They're no longer feel good allies in the way that Kurama was. These Ten Tails are different. They are evolving, and Boruto setting the stage for us to realize not all evolution is a good thing. Boruto appears to be implying that when you read between the lines of his words, the Ten Tails might have a consciousness of their own, because when Code says that the Ten Tails is merely a brainless monster that eats things until it can consume an Otsutsuki like Boruto Kawaki, Boruto warns them, destroy them while you still have control over them. Keywords being while you still have control over them. Whatever Boruto has seen has him trying to reason with Code, someone who is an Otsutsuki fanatic, but he's clearly prepared to not only kill Code, but also brutalize him to the point that he reveals the hidden location of the Ten Tails so Boruto can destroy it. This is clearly more than just the Ten Tails being used to harvest a chakra fruit, and Code is clearly making the mistake that not just Madara made with Zetsu, not realizing that he had his own will, but he's also making the mistake that Ishiki made with Kaguya. Kaguya was the lower ranked of the two. She was supposed to be fed to the Ten Tails to harvest a chakra fruit, yet she waited for when Ishiki lowered his guard and she left him near death so that she could take the chakra fruit for herself. Neither Madara or Ishiki saw the betrayal coming, and it appears as if Code won't see the Ten Tails betrayal coming either, which goes back to what Amato said about Code. He isn't the brightest person. Meanwhile, we see Sarada showcasing a few moves that are straight homages to Sasuke in the Naruto manga. When you look at her poses for the fire release jutsu, she uses to take out some of the claw grinds, to her pose when she uses Chidori to take out the remaining claw grind. Which, just speaking of Sarada, one interesting thing of note is that we still have people that they see these panels and they're of the belief that Sarada does not have her Sharingan on, and they're getting annoyed she's not using her Mangekyo against low-level fodder like this, but she does have her Sharingan on. But I will say this, Sarada is not stupid enough to use the Chidori without having her Sharingan cut on. I think a lot of people are forgetting why the Chidori is forbidden to use without the Sharingan. If you go back to Kakashi's flashback in Naruto Volume 27, Minato steps in to save Kakashi because a straight line high-speed movement required for the Chidori as a thrusting jab leaves the user vulnerable to a counterattack because they don't have the ability to see through the tunnel vision that it causes. That's why Minato stepped in to save Kakashi before Kakashi got killed, and why he told Kakashi never use that jutsu again. That's why Kakashi said that the jutsu was incomplete until he got Obito's Sharingan. It literally makes zero sense for Sarada to not have the Sharingan on when performing the Chidori, especially after she was told by Sasuke, you need to use this thing with the actual Sharingan. And even more so, she's already seen the claw grinds can travel through claw marks. She's not going to use a straight line attack without being sure she can counterattack if need be. However, However, just like her peers in Team 10 as well as Kawaki, Sarada makes the mistake of lowering her guard. She thinks that the Claw Grimes are defeated and dealt with in her area. However, she quickly learns that the Claw Grimes don't have to be alive for another Claw Grime to travel through its body, and the Chunin pushes her out the way to avoid being struck. And this time, Sarada learns the lesson that Boruto did when Konoha took that attack that saved him from Ao's ninja tech drone. Sarada in this chapter learns the hard way by having two people who are clearly deferring to her because she was stronger get killed right in front of her eyes. When the Ten-Tailed soldiers devour people, they produce what looks like a tree, and honestly, it makes sense. The Ten-Tails is a mere seedling. If we go back to what Amato said when he explained the difference between the Ten-Tails that Jigen had and the Ten-Tails Naruto fought in the 4th Ninja War. This is the story once again showing us that what Amato said, this Ten-Tails that Ishiki was in possession of, it is different than the one that Kaguya had, and Boruto's well aware that something darker is coming because Boruto's desperate, and by the end of the chapter, he's using a brand new jutsu with the intention to possibly kill Code. Boruto clearly means business. He's spooked to the point that he is bluffing about killing Code because there is a larger Ten-Tails threat that has Boruto absolutely terrified, and for good reason. With Chapter 3 of Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, the story it is continuing to turn the page on the old Boruto that we knew in the past. This new Boruto, he is a lot colder hearted, and the story it is starting to set the seeds that Kashin Koji has trained Boruto and makes you want to believe that Boruto had Sage Mode. We also are learning about the truth about the Ten-Tails. Naruto's child has been through hell the last 3 years, and all those feel-good moments, they are gone, and he has been shamed because he is carrying a heavy burden about what is in store for the future. Because while this is a new story, Boruto is still continuing to try to battle against the enemy known as Fate. Right away, we can see that Code is spooked by Boruto's Rasengan Uzuhiko, and it's because while Code might not be the smartest guy out there, something we've been told countless times by multiple characters in universe, even Code can see that Boruto is using something different from all the other Rasengans that he's seen in the past. Back when Code was hunting down Boruto, battling him off and on again for the last 2 out of the last 3 years, it's basically a primal instinct that every animal has when they know they're in the presence of a predator that can kill them. Code has been talking a really big game, but he can see just as we as the audience can that something has changed in Boruto and that this Boruto is not bluffing. This is Boruto who is extremely confident that this new jutsu can kill Code if it connects, and for a moment we see Code actually pause as he tries to discern the situation. He starts going through his mind all the different Rasengans that he's seen Boruto use, namely that this looks similar to the Vanished Rasengan, but Code notes that that jutsu is invisible to the naked eye and that it's used via ninja trickery meant to ambush the target when they least expect it. Yet this Rasengan is something that while Code can't see the chakra in the shape of a ball, he can clearly see chakra rings around the jutsu being used, and he knows that Boruto is preparing something, which leads him questioning why Boruto is approaching him with such overwhelming confidence, because this is clearly out of character. Based off of this, we can conclude that the last 2 times that Boruto and Code mixed it up, Boruto was a scared child who fought against Code, and he was running away every chance that he got. Very similar to how Trunks was in the Dragon Ball manga, where he's running from Cyborg 17 and 18, running for his life, never battling them head up until he gets strong enough to defeat them. However, what we see here is that this current version of Boruto, he isn't running, he's walking right towards Code, and it's enough to spook Code into going into one of his claw marks that are on the ground to try and ambush Boruto, which in theory, it isn't a bad idea. If it was like 90% of the other Rasengans we've seen in the series where they have to be rammed into the target, at least by getting behind Boruto in his mind, he stands a chance of being able to adjust to when Boruto turns around to try and connect the attack. Yet when Code does attempt to do this, Boruto looks completely unfazed by what just happened and shows a key element of what we saw in Naruto, which is the move hidden behind the move. Boruto has already set up a checkmate of Code, but Code is too dumb to realize it. In a way, it's very similar to what Shikamaru did when he had already set up potential check marks for Hidan and Kakuzu in the Akatsuki suppression arc, where he had Kakashi stab Kakuzu in the heart with a Raikiri and then grab some of Kakuzu's blood as insurance to trick Hidan when Shikamaru fought him later on one-on-one. Boruto did something very similar here. He lured Code into a false sense of security, and it makes a lot of sense. Boruto has seen Code fight numerous times now, from the battle in Boruto Naruto Next Generations to into all the battles that happen in the time skip arc, and it goes back to another key element of what we were told in Naruto, which is that the more times you use your signature move, which in this case would be Code's claw marks and that teleportation of them, your enemy will be able to plan around said jutsu if you don't kill them right away. Boruto used Code's own jutsu against him to get close enough to launch the attack without Code actually realizing. Code arrogantly thinks that he stopped the attack when he grabs Boruto's wrist, but had he been paying attention, he would have been able to see that despite grabbing Boruto by the wrist, the wind chakra rings around Boruto are still active, which in turn means this brand new jutsu that he knows nothing about is also still active and that he needs to be cautious. What we see here is Code failing to not fall into the same trap that he did briefly when he fought against Boruto in part 1 of the story. There were a few times during that first Boruto versus Code fight where Code, despite having the upper hand on Boruto was still able to get the drop on Code a few times, because Boruto isn't just a skilled shinobi, he's a prodigy son of the 7th Hokage, the most unorthodox shinobi in the history of the ninja world. He is the grandson of the 4th Hokage, one of the biggest prodigies in the entire history of the ninja world, and he's got the blood of the Hyuga clan, one of the 4 noble clans of Konoha, and one of the clans that have one of the strongest connections to Kaguya. You don't underestimate someone like Boruto just based off of his genetics alone. Even if he doesn't have the talent of those in his bloodline, you still treat him with that level of caution due to the respect that is owed by the name that he carries. And unfortunately for Code, Boruto's proving that he's worth the fear that comes from having the genetic background that Boruto has. Boruto remarks to Code that the jutsu is already halfway done, and at this point Boruto can kill Code at any point if he wants to, and it's in that moment that Code realizes that the chakra rings have gone from being wind-like rotations around Boruto to now transferring to his arm and surrounding his body as time goes on. What he doesn't realize is that Boruto has trapped him, both by letting Code use his claw marks to get close and by blocking Code with his sword to keep pushing back with just enough force to force Code to stay in place, all while distracting him from the jutsu being released onto Code's body. It's as Kakashi said in part 1, a ninja must see through deception, and Code, not being a ninja, is unable to see past the deception used by a ninja, further highlighting the symbolism of what we're seeing unfold. Boruto is a shinobi fighting a cyborg, which is a human with mechanical enhancements, in a story that has dealt with the conflict of where does science fit in this world of ninja? Can ninjutsu and science coexist without conflict? And we're seeing Boruto embody the heart of a shinobi in this battle, just as he told us in Boruto chapter 80 when he said that he was still a shinobi to Momoshiki. It's very beautiful writing to see this come full circle. Boruto then tells Code, either take me to the Ten Tails and I'll release this jutsu, or you can die here. And Code, being as arrogant as he is, despite knowing that Boruto has clearly done something to his body, refuses to see this as anything other than a bluff, which is what starts the downfall of Code in this chapter. No attack he launches at Boruto actually lands. He misses literally every single attack and it baffles him, which then plays into Boruto's hand because Code is lashing out in anger and rage, letting emotion cloud his judgment, and he doesn't realize until Boruto slams his jutsu into his stomach that it wasn't Boruto dodging him, nor was his a genjutsu or even a clone jutsu. Boruto's body was betraying him and throwing off his equilibrium, which means he was throwing off his balance. It's at this point that Boruto completes the Rasengan Uzuhiko, and the sheer force of the attack sends Code flying across the village so hard that Code is drawn with a very expressive shot of his face in agony and in so much pain that it looks like Boruto almost forced that boy to open up that one eye that he got the scar over during the time skip. And what's most impressive about this is that Code is using the Karma Seal, which means this version of Code without limiters is stronger than Jigen, and Boruto is dogging out a beyond Jigen level threat without using his Karma Seal. This Boruto is extremely powerful. When Boruto compliments Code on being able to withstand the jutsu that he used, Code doesn't seem to get that there was sarcasm baked into Boruto's comment, because Boruto knows what's coming next, and Boruto isn't the only one who knows what's coming, so too does Damon by the looks of it. And this is where things get really interesting. So Ada and Damon are shown, and the cyborg sibling duo, they're in a conversation. Ada's informing Damon of what Boruto just did, and she's confused as to how this is different than a normal Rasengan, and goes as far as to call an even simpler version of it. But Damon uses Ada's play-by-play and his own observation of what's happening to explain to us as the audience what really took place. Boruto has shaken the entire planet with a casual use of the Rasengan, and Damon refers to it as a jutsu that uses the entire planet's rotation. Eerily enough, is actually right, and Damon is excited about this, which can only mean we're about to get a huge payoff for a major subplot from Boruto Naruto Next Generation. At the end of the manga, we saw Damon beat the brakes off of Boruto and Kawaki inside of the house they're staying at, and then after the shinjutsu was cast and everyone's memories of Boruto and Kawaki were swapped except for Ada and Damon, Sarada and Sumire, and Boruto and Kawaki, Damon tells Boruto to make sure he takes his time during the time skip to get stronger, because when he returns, Damon expects Boruto to be strong enough that Damon can fight him at full power for the first time in his entire life. What we see here is Kishimoto using Damon's excitement to remind us as the audience that this isn't a subplot that's been forgotten about. We're either going to get that fight or it's going to be a red herring, but the subplot itself has not been forgotten about. After Code falls onto the ground, Boruto explains to Code that his death sentence is finally at play and that he should consider this a counterattack, a defense if you will, by the very planet that Code wanted to destroy by harvesting a chakra fruit. Boruto says that his Rasengan absorbs chakra from the planet itself and that the rotation of his jutsu is tied to the planet. Just as the chakra running through Code's body on that attack won't ever stop, it's just like the rotation of the planet. It will always rotate, and that the damage will continue to build inside of Code over time and eventually kill him. And I love this because this is a huge, mega Easter egg if you're a hardcore Naruto fan. So if you go back to 2015, when Boruto the movie was being made, the movie novelization, which was written by Ukyo Kodachi, the former writer of Boruto, and told the complete story of the final screenplay for the movie that Kishimoto and Kodachi wrote together, showing things that weren't in the movie or fully expounded upon. One of the things that we learned in that story is that Fuse Momoshiki could draw on some of the power from the planet that they were fighting on, some of the stars in that dimension, and from Momoshiki's other interconnected dimensions in order to power himself up. It wasn't all the chakra from those dimensions. It was only a portion, but it was enough that when he got desperate fighting Naruto and Sasuke, it allowed Momoshiki to power up and battle them as equals for a brief period of time. Think of what Momoshiki did in that novel, and think of what Boruto's doing here, similar to a Genki Dama from Dragon Ball. It doesn't take all the energy of the planet. It only takes a safe amount of the health, i.e. the Genki, of the people on the planet and the planet itself, but it's enough to do serious damage to those who are hit by it, and we see a similar thing done here. Code is in serious pain from this attack, and it will only grow worse, making it absolutely overpowered. Boruto takes the time to tell Code, if I release this jutsu, your life will be spared. But he says his condition is that Code takes him to the Ten Tails, and it's here we see some of those Naruto genetics in Boruto, because even when facing Code in this manner, he's still willing to give him mercy and allow him to redeem himself. But Boruto isn't above killing Code if it comes down to it. Or rather, as we'll see in a moment, he wants Code to believe that he's going to kill him in this very moment, when in reality it's Boruto setting up another trap for Code, and Code being so ruled by his emotions that he can't see the trap that he's walked into. What we're seeing here are those Minato genetics on full display, and what we're seeing is how during this time skip, Sasuke has raised Boruto into a shinobi, because the level of ninja trickery that he's pulling off here, where it's back-to-back tricks, that's showing how big of a fool that Code actually is, because Code is consistently falling for Boruto's trap. However, before Boruto can get much further into his conversation with Code, Kawaki chooses that moment to try and kill Boruto by using a sneak attack. Yet Boruto casually dodges the attack, and it isn't until Boruto lays eyes on Himawari that Boruto's stone cold expression changes, and we see him soften his face around the edges of the eye and the mouth, and we see the hurt in Boruto's eyes as Himawari calls him by his name and not by Oni-chan like she normally does when she refers to him as big brother. She's never called Boruto by Boruto's own name. In the manga, it's always been Oni-chan or big brother. It's a gut punch for Boruto, a reminder of what he's lost, and as we've seen in both the manga and the anime, Boruto has a huge soft spot for his sister. She's the reason he got so mad at Naruto during the Chunin exams, because Naruto ruined his sister's birthday by sending a shadow clone there and dropping the cake. It's As the 48 Laws of Power, a book by Robert Greene, discusses in detail. Law number 33 says discover every man's thumbscrew, which basically means even the strongest of men have a weakness that they hide, and if you discover said weakness, you can bend them to your will. And Kawaki knows this, and that's what I love about their entire interaction here, especially when Kawaki sends everyone away. He's letting Boruto know that he knows which buttons to push on him. Boruto's biggest thumbscrew is his family. It's why he was almost trapped by Kawaki in Boruto Naruto Next Generations after Kawaki sealed away Naruto and Hinata and Boruto was rushing there. Kawaki initially was going to wait for Boruto at his house when Boruto be the most emotional, but instead he heads him off and tries to attack him at the Hokage monument. Had Kawaki have waited, he probably would have been able to kill Boruto, because Boruto would have been too emotional in that moment at the house seeing all the damage. This is likely why he kept Himawari somewhat close. It's a strategic advantage over Boruto that Kawaki has. So you can tell that Boruto's thinking to himself, look at how much Himawari's grown over this time. Her hair's gotten longer, she's clearly grown a few inches. However, upon seeing Shikamaru and Team 10 arrive, Boruto's face hardens and he tells him to stop interfering with this conversation with Code, and just as Code attempts to escape, Kawaki uses Sukuna Hikona to shrink the claw marks and tells Shikamaru they can kill Code if they need to. Yet Kawaki has so much of a hard-on for Boruto that he can't see reason. He's a lot like Code, someone who Kawaki hates. He's blinded by his own emotions, which allows for Code to summon a Ten-Tails Claw Grind in an effort to successfully pull off a multi-step actual plan of escape. The Claw Grind appears, Kawaki hits it, Kawaki's held in place, and Code jumps through the claw mark on the back of the Claw Grind in order to escape to safety, showing that while Code might be an idiot, he still can use a little trickery himself as well. After Kawaki sends Team 10 and Himawari away to deal with the Claw Grinds, he tells Boruto that he's gonna finish his business with them. But for Boruto, fighting Kawaki is not at the top of his list of things to do, because Boruto is in a battle against fate, and right now that fated battle of Boruto versus Kawaki, it doesn't need to happen just yet. But the story's doing a really good job of just teasing, because it knows you want to see Boruto versus Kawaki like you saw in that flash forward sequence, but right now there are bigger problems that you have to get through before you can get to that moment that you want, which this is the narrative telling us the Ten-Tails threat, it is that big. However, while this is going on, Sarada informs the other Chunin, as well as us as the audience, that the Claw Grinds that ate the Chunin, they didn't actually die. They're alive for now. And Sarada makes a conclusion based off the information that she's seen, which is that if the Claw Grinds are made out of the Ten-Tails and the Ten-Tails is meant to eat Otsutsuki, then by instinct, the Claw Grinds are going to eat humans. And we see another sign of what Boruto warned Code about, which is that by giving his chakra to the Ten-Tails and to these Claw Grinds, he's changed them beyond Code's comprehension, and we see Sarada with that limited information she has at her disposal, she comes to that same conclusion. While Kawaki makes fun of Boruto for copying Sasuke's sense of style, which they look very similar, it's worth noting that this is the first time since the first chapter of the series that we've heard a mention of Sasuke, yet we've never actually seen him, which now means that Sasuke, that death clock, is still being watched, waiting for a sign of life of our favorite Uchiha. However, while this lack of proof of life for Sasuke might concern some of you, what's worth noting is that Boruto maintains his sarcastic nature when speaking to Kawaki, and he puts emphasis on Himawari still being alive and in good health, which means as of right now, Boruto isn't concerned about Sasuke. When Kawaki says he's gonna kill Boruto inside of his hometown, it's worth noting that Kawaki is saying this when nobody's around. And most importantly, it's worth noting that Boruto says dying in Konoha is not something he's opposed to. However, that day won't be today. Now, this is yet another subtle nod to something that we've been seeing ever since the Naruto series creator Masashi Kishimoto took back over the writing for Boruto's manga, which is yet another reference to Samurai 8, the manga Kishimoto tried to write and had a former assistant draw that got canceled. We have Boruto, a character whose powers allow him to see into the future, saying dying in Konoha isn't something he plans to do today. While it's easy to write this off as Boruto saying he's not dying, period, it is worth noting he is giving off a lot of the vibes of Hachimaru, a character Kishimoto created in his other manga, where Hachimaru was completely content with dying under the right circumstances to protect those who he cares for. It's something to keep your eye on when it comes to Boruto. However, what we see next is what I meant earlier when I said that Boruto was playing another trap for Code, because Boruto has a toad inside of his collar of his jacket that he's been in communication with the entire time. He wanted to create a sense of helplessness for Code, where Code would have to retreat. Also, Boruto could find the location of the Ten-Tails and go destroy it. After all, he knew there would be a better chance of hell freezing over, Jada Pinkett Smith not embarrassing herself by embarrassing her husband when she talks about Tupac, before Code willingly took him to the Ten-Tails, which is why Boruto set up that multi-step plan in order to get to the location himself. When Boruto and Code first fought, Boruto appears to have actually placed one of the toads on a Code's body. body, likely when he slammed that Rasengan Uzuhiko into his stomach, and this is a clear sense of a throwback to when Kashin Koji slipped a toad on a Konohamaru during the Rasengan clash. It's there that we see that Bug's actually been swallowed up by one of the claw grimes and turned into a tree, and Boruto's gotten his eyes on the Ten Tails, all without Code ever realizing what happened and that he's been played. And when we see Boruto weaving the hindsight at the end of the chapter, Boruto looks very confident that he's about to pull a fast one on Code with yet another attack that Code doesn't see coming. And because Boruto is making the concentration hand sign, this is the story letting you know Boruto has learned the Flying Raijin Jutsu, the jutsu made famous by his grandfather Minato and created by the second Hokage, and now Boruto is about to teleport into the Ten Tails dimension, but there is a catch. Flying Raijin was shown in the past to not be enough to transport to Otsutsuki dimensions, which means that whatever Boruto's learned under Kashin Koji has to be another variant of Flying Raijin in order to do something his grandfather Minato could not do. Now, based on where we are right now, the story does not confirm it's Koji who trained Boruto, but the strong implication is there. Now, with this current chapter, it continues to keep the foot on the gas by confirming quite a few things. Number one, it tells us the tragic fate of Sasuke. It also sets up the truth about Codes changing with the Ten Tails, as well as set up Kawaki versus Sarada, and it gives us more information about Koji and Boruto's relationship, as well as introduce the primary antagonist moving into this next arc, while most importantly showing us that Boruto has lost yet another battle against fate. Because like usual, we open up the chapter where the last one left off. We see Code looking down at the Ten Tails main body, and as he's doing so, he's thinking back to all of Boruto's multiple warnings about not taking the Ten Tails lightly, and he's making light of Boruto freaking out in the way that he did, totally not taking Boruto seriously at all. However, we see that while Code might not be taking this in a serious manner, Boruto himself is taking this extremely serious, like it's a critical situation, with Boruto getting told by the Toad that they're out of time and that he has to act now, and that's where we get the bombshell. Boruto has mastered Minato's Flying Raijin Jutsu, but as expected, he's still not as skilled at it as Minato was, which is why he's telling the Toad to be quiet, because he still needs to concentrate in silence when using that jutsu. Now, this is a really big deal, and not just because Kawaki is curious about who Boruto's talking to, but it also shows us that for as impressive as Boruto is, he's still lacking in using the Flying Raijin, with him still needing high concentration to perform the jutsu, so he's not at the level of someone like Tobirama or even Minato, who could spam the jutsu like it was second nature in the middle of a battlefield with huge explosions going off. Despite the monster chakra reserves that the jutsu requires, which Naruto's manga tells us it takes 3 special jonin pulling their chakra together just to do the basic teleportation, it's still really impressive to see Boruto join that very small list of shinobi who can use this jutsu, because it's still keeping it exclusive. It's literally the same number of people who know the Rasengan that know the Flying Raijin now, which you need to keep it that way as a trump card like this in order to maintain the mystic aura of the jutsu around it, because it has an aura being exclusive around it. We then see Boruto arrive in Ishiki's dimension, and Boruto wastes no time by heading over to the Ten Tails to verify its location, which adds to Boruto's threat assessment of the Ten Tails, and he's outright ignoring Code this entire time. One, because he's already proven to Code that he can kill him at any time, and two, because Boruto has deemed the Jubi to be something of a world-ending threat that it basically comes top priority before anything else in his mind, which further adds to the realization that Boruto was spooked by what it was he saw in the future, and now we know why he was so spooked. Standing behind Boruto is a fully humanized version of the Ten Tails, complete with the Rinnegan in both eyes, and the moment Boruto sees it, Boruto immediately begins to start panicking, and this is huge. Up until now, the Boruto we've seen outside of the moment he saw Himawari for the first time in 3 years, this Boruto's been emotionless, distant, and stoic to a degree. For the first time, we see Boruto in full-blown panic, and it isn't because the Ten Tails standing before him looks like Bug, who's been dripped out in Code's claw marks and has a Ten Tails chinchilla jacket on. It's because Boruto knows the worst-case scenario he warned Code about is finally here, and he's making it known up front. That guy Bug you see stuck in the tree, that's not the guy standing before you, despite them looking so similar in the face. What you're looking at is a whole different monster, and it should be treated as such. However, before Boruto can go full into detail detail. Boruto is speed blitzed by that 10 tails humanoid body and is slammed into the wall, and we get our first real sign of assessment of this thing's actual power. It's strong. It's really strong. Up until this point, Boruto was just hacking down 10 tails soldiers that he encountered like it was nothing, and when he fought against Code prior to this, Boruto was never on the defensive despite fighting someone who was at a beyond Jigen level of power. Boruto has always been on the offensive and complete control when he's fighting, but we see it here when he's having to block the attack. Boruto's grimacing and he's straining, which is insane to think just given how much stronger than Jigen based Boruto is right now. However, that goes back to what Boruto told Code. You changed the 10 tails fundamentally in a way you don't understand when you gave it your chakra, and it now has a humanoid body, and this power increase seems to suggest that we're seeing the 10 tails harnessing its own chakra and Code's chakra simultaneously in a humanoid body for this power increase. Very similar to how a Biju's chakra, when it's fully controlled, is stronger inside of a humanoid body of a Jinchuriki than it is when it's out on the wild on its own. We then see that the 10 tails is capable of more than just one worded speech, like we saw when it attacked Kawaki, where it just called Kawaki Otsuki and nothing else. This 10 tails with both Rinnegan that Boruto's fighting is not only able to recognize who Boruto is, but it's also able to think and formulate sentences to carry on complete conversations with Boruto, taunting him for coming to his death in order to be feasted upon. And Boruto doesn't waste any time now that he sees the threat level rising and performs an unnamed lightning release jutsu to get the 10 tails off of his back, or at least that was Boruto's plan. But as we see, even the best laid plans, they don't work out in the way that you might have originally expected it to, and Boruto falls victim to something that Naruto's manga hammered home to us all the time, which is that you're at a disadvantage when you're fighting a powerful enemy who has unknown powers and abilities that you yourself can't account for, which is why you would see shinobi like Kakashi tread very carefully when they first battle someone of a high caliber. A classic example being Kakashi using that lightning clone and hiding so he could see the power and skills of Pain, and also to see if there are more of the 6 paths of Pain in the area before he eventually revealed himself. This 10 tails shows it has the ability to modify its body and attempts to digest Boruto by transforming its arm into a mouth, and has the intention of swallowing up Boruto. However, Boruto's able to use the Flying Raijin to teleport away back to the frog summoning at Code's feet that's holding Boruto's Flying Raijin marker, which is in the form of that Konoha symbol. And the 10-tailed soldier has now taken note of the fact that Boruto's using the Flying Raijin jutsu, which means given its increased mental capacity, Boruto now has to be careful not to spam the jutsu, because if he does it against someone who sees it numerous times, they can start coming up with counter strategies for it, and these 10 tails are smart enough to do that. Boruto is quickly realizing that he is out of options, and he sees Code double down in Pain, and he quickly undoes the Rasengan Uzuhiko before it can kill Code, because Boruto views this one 10 tails that he's been battling as being too big of a threat to deal with on his own. However, as Boruto tries to explain to Code that this is the fate that awaits everyone who has been bitten by the 10 tails, we see yet another humanoid 10 tails has been born while all this battling had taken place, and this 10 tails has one of the most disrespectful entrances that we have in the entire series, while simultaneously flying in the air above them. Basically, watching Boruto struggle with this one 10 tails could have stepped in at any point in time is another 10 tails who utters the words simply "it's chakra," while releasing his own chakra signature for Boruto to pick up on it, which means that this 10 tails can also suppress its chakra like an Otsuki. And it's here that we see Boruto with another hint of panic actually drawn in his face, because what has happened here is fate has now put Boruto face to face with the 10 tails awakened Shinju, who is called Jura, who is made up from the main body of the 10 tails, and he is in possession of being created from Ishiki's essence, and that's why you start seeing some of the characteristics of 6 paths power being used, which is the power that comes from having the power of the 10 tail. That set of Magatamas and the spiral on the back of the jacket is the same thing that we saw when you look at Obito, when Obito had 10 tails power, and when Naruto got his initial 6 paths power, and Naruto Boruto Volume 71, where Naruto stacked the 6-pass power via the Kyuubi cloak and stack it on top of the 6-pass Sage mode that Hagoromo gave him. However, what we're seeing here is equally as scary because, like the other Ten Tails, this Ten Tails also possesses a Rinnegan in both eyes, which means we have to start accounting for the possibility that this thing can also use the basic 6-pass jutsu that you associate with the Rinnegan, since all those 6-pass of pain jutsu are jutsu every Rinnegan user has access to. This Ten Tails is then shown full frontal as he informs Code that it's because of Code's actions that they have awakened and they now have an ego, which is basically these things, they aren't just human in appearance. They now have the full stages of humanity as well in terms of their development. It's not too unlike what you saw in Hunter x Hunter with the Chimera Ants, where they rapidly developed, and even in Boruto, where Orochimaru in the anime is purposely watching over the development of his clone son Mitsuki in order to monitor the stages of his humanity. However, this rapid acceleration is a really big deal, and for Boruto, you have to believe this is alarming to see. A brainless Ten Tails, that is one thing, that's something you can deal with. Even the Boruto Kages told Naruto, hey, we can deal with the Ten Tails. Now, no, though, Sasuke, that might be a problem, and it's because the Ten Tails is operating purely off of instinct. However, a threat level of the size of the Ten Tails, it now has the ability to collect information, process information, and make adjustments based off of that information. Now, that is something dangerous altogether. Making this worse is this Ten Tails has the appearance that resembles that of the monk Jigen, who is Ishikotsuki's failed vessel, and that goes back to Code using karma to create the Shinju. But that's not the only bombshell that we have. On top of a third Ten Tails revealing itself in humanoid form. This one appears to have the appearance of Moegi, the squad leader of Shikadai's Team 10, which means Boruto is now solely outnumbered. Even if Code were there to help him out, it just went from a 2 versus 2 to a 3 versus 2, and like the other two Ten Tails, this female is capable of speech and critical thinking as well, with her flat out dragging Code through the mud, telling him that it's his destiny to be used by others. And this should be something that makes anyone who paid very close attention to Boruto Naruto Next Generation start raising an eyebrow, because back when Kawaki versus Code happened, one thing that Code told Kawaki was that both of them, their fates were to be used by others, and that they had no free will, and that the fate that Kawaki was running from was something that Code himself had long since accepted. Well, with this one line, Code's fate has been thrown right back in his face by this woman, and as if to cement that we're getting ready to go through a pending bloodbath, just after the Toad warns Boruto to run away, we have a fourth Ten Tails humanoid suddenly pop up, and this one gives off the most dangerous vibes of them all, and for a really good reason. It's the one who puts the most visible fear into Boruto and has him frozen in place. It's now a 4 versus 2, which means even if Code teamed up, their chances of winning, they just went down in the toilet. Meanwhile, back inside of Konoha, Kawaki is briefing Shikamaru about Boruto using an unknown space-time ninjutsu, but what's interesting here is that despite Boruto literally saying he's using the flying Raijin, his grandfather's jutsu, Kawaki doesn't reveal the jutsu name to Shikamaru, and it's for a really good reason. Boruto used the signature jutsu of Minato. Even with the shinjutsu making Shikamaru look the other way at things that should make him question if Kawaki's lying about being Naruto's son, the wheels would start turning in his head as to why Boruto learned the jutsu of the 4th Hokage and how Boruto's even able to actually learn that jutsu. It's a calculated withholding of information for a really big reason. Kawaki knows that if this was a football game, he'd be up right now by 2 touchdowns on Boruto, and he isn't trying to do something that can get Boruto back in the game to make this more competitive. However, as Shikamaru and Kawaki are going back and forth with how to deal with Boruto, Sarada steps in and she starts throwing her weight around, flat out telling both of them, hey, you guys are being stupid for your assessment, and we get a really good detail in the manga. So if you pay really close attention, you can see the twitch marks by Kawaki's head the moment that Sarada steps into the room, because it's our first sign that there is real tension that exists between these two, and it's important for us to take note of that as readers. This is a big moment because it's the first time we've seen these two on screen together since Kawaki used Omnipotence, and Kawaki knows that she's one of the few people who know the truth, because as far back as chapter 1 of Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, she's still speaking on behalf of Boruto, telling Shikamaru he's got the situation wrong. Sarada takes the opportunity to twist the knife in Kawaki even further by telling Shikamaru, you've got aid at your disposal, don't you? Make her verify that Code attacked the village and that Boruto was the one that made him run away. It's a very subtle act of defiance by Sarada, but it's clear she's drawing a line in the sand here and making it known Kawaki didn't save the village from Code. It was Boruto, and you better not try to lump Boruto in with being being the one that helped Code attack the village. He's actually the one that saved it. This whole situation, it reeks of Sarada and Kawaki having a chess match against each other, and due to the omnipotence, Shikamaru doesn't realize what's going on here. In his mind, he thinks he's just seeing another squabble between the children Naruto and Sasuke, but due to the dramatic irony of the situation, we as readers, we can clearly see what it is that Sarada's doing. She's still trying to get Boruto's execution order tossed out. Now Kawaki, he's sharp enough to catch on to what it is that she's doing, and he wants her back off. Boruto is Notsuki. He is an enemy because he's Notsuki, and technically Kawaki isn't wrong. While Momoshiki can resurrect using Boruto's body as a byproduct of Momoshiki bringing Boruto back to life, Momoshiki, he can still hijack Boruto's consciousness under the right conditions, like say Boruto running out of chakra. If that were to happen, Momoshiki would try to take Kawaki and feed him to the Ten Tails. Then it would be game over. So Kawaki's technically right here, but what we see here is that there's an unwavering faith that Sarada has in Boruto that this won't happen. This scene in a lot of ways is similar to what you had in the Injustice comics and the Injustice cartoon movie that came out a few years ago. We get Superman and the Flash, and they're playing chess while they're having this moral debate on should you kill criminals based off of their past actions? Should you kill someone based off of the possibility of what they might do in the future? With Flash telling Superman his idea to kill a threat before the threat actually happens is the wrong stance, because people have the right to make the decision to go down whatever path they go down. Sarada is basically taking that side in the debate because she knows that Boruto's innocent, but also she knows it's not right to hold Boruto to a death sentence or something that might happen in the future. Boruto deserves a chance to solve that problem before you talk about killing him, and she throws in Kawaki's face, basically saying, hey, by your logic, then we should kill you then. You are also Notsuki. Now, to the naked eye, that does look like it's just Sarada being sarcastic, but it's also a very thinly veiled threat. She just put Kawaki on notice. She'll kill him if she gets the chance to do so, if it ever came to a situation where Kawaki forced her to make that choice. While there is a noticeable gap between these two, how large we can't really assess at this point in time. We can only speculate. Sarada at least has the balls to at least throw it out there by warning Kawaki, don't put yourself above the fray. Yet that's exactly what Kawaki does here. He basically says, yes, I am a Notsuki, but I'm an exception to the rule, which at this point is both interesting as well as a bit of insight into Kawaki, because he's still sticking to his goal that he told Naruto. He's gonna kill all the Notsuki, including Boruto, at which point Kawaki said he's willing to disappear, and you have to wonder if by disappear, he means what he told Naruto before he sealed Naruto away, which is that he's willing to die at Naruto's hands if it gets to a point where Naruto wants to kill him for what he did to Boruto. And that's why you see him telling Sarada, you don't get to choose when my role ends. It's so huge. But Sarada, one, doesn't have that information or context, and two, she isn't backing down on it one bit, and it leads to Shikamaru stepping in to break up the fighting. However, we see more brilliance from Sarada in that she's quickly turning the situation around by telling Shikamaru that they should look at the current circumstances as basically this is the enemy of my enemy being my friend. Boruto is clearly trying to stop Code, so instead of trying to kill Boruto, why don't we focus on taking down Code first? And you can tell that this annoys Kawaki because she's openly trying to buy Boruto time to prove himself innocent, and she's using Code's invasion as well as a possibility of being able to save the people who are turned into a tree, because she knows as a Hokage, Shikamaru still has an obligation to those people to try and save them. He can't view them as being collateral damage, and if Boruto has a way to save them, then Boruto is a necessary evil. In short, Sarada just checkmate Kawaki in this round of chess here. This match is hers, but the larger game between these two is not over, because as we'll see with Boruto, while these two are going back and forth, Boruto's the one who's literally fighting for his life. Boruto draws out his sword as he stares down the 4 Ten Tails, and the one who he had been previously too shook to engage with emerges out of the claw mark that's near Boruto for a sneak attack. But Boruto not only dodges the attack, but when he does so, he gets a good look at it, and we see now why he was so shook before. This Ten Tails looks just like Sasuke, which is our first sign that Sasuke has been bitten by one of the Ten Tails on screen before all this took place, and we now see why the Toad is telling Boruto, get out of here, because a Ten Tails version of Sasuke, that is trouble. And as if to show why this is the case, with a simple Chidori of its own, this Ten Tails Sasuke is able to counter Boruto's Rasengan Uzehiko with ease, and as Boruto begins to start trying to fight back against Ten-Tails Sasuke. The Ten-Tails, who looks like Bug, tries to land a sneak attack to devour Boruto, and this whole time Code's watching the situation, and for the first time in the entire run of his character, he does something smart. He retreats. However, it's not because he sees this battle is too far out of his weight class, but it's because he sees the situation for what it is. These Ten-Tails are trying to carry out the will that's left behind to him by Ishiki's spirit to harvest a chakra fruit, and if these Ten-Tails are able to turn it into Sasuke, then so be it. The will of the clan has lived on through their actions, and Code is enough of an Sasuke worshipping nut job that he'd sacrifice himself if it meant that one of them could eat the chakra fruit, or if this could be him just making a play to let everything play out, and then when everything is done, he just reaps the benefit of getting a god tree and the chakra fruit himself after the fact. It's not a bad plan by Code, and this won't be the last time we see him, but this was the best move for Code to make. Now, what's fascinating about these Ten-Tails being able to use the jutsu of the people that they consumed or that they've bidden, which makes sense given what Ishiki stated to us in Boruto and Naruto Next Generations, all genetic data that has lived or currently lives on Earth goes into making a chakra fruit, as he told Code. So the idea of them biting and being able to utilize some of the jutsu of the person that they bit, it's basically a transference of data through chakra. And the fact that you got a Ten-Tails Sasuke, now you kind of see exactly why Sasuke had to lose the Rinnegan, because imagine a Ten-Tails Sasuke that has Sasuke's Char Rinnegan and also has a Manin Teijikar and all of Sasuke's power that comes from having a Rinne Sharingan. This makes a lot of sense now. These things, they look like shinobi that they bit. They're able to use their jutsu and powers as well. They are a problem. Boruto, upon realizing he can't win 4 versus 1, quickly uses the Flying Raijin to get away, and the Ten-Tails, it looks like Jigen reveals that due to them being so freshly awakened, they allowed themselves to get carried away in the battle due to nothing more than mere curiosity, and that they will track down Boruto wherever it is that he's going to, and that he won't be able to escape his destiny. That's where we end off the chapter in this first arc in a huge heartbreak. Boruto is shown sitting under the tree looking at Sasuke's headband, clearly emotional, and has to recompose himself when Kashin Koji steps out the shadows, and he warns Boruto that being as reckless as he was almost destroyed the planet, and tells Boruto he won't try to calm him down from the emotional state that he's in, but that Boruto should have known that this was a possible outcome, which is that they aren't going to be able to save Sasuke, and that they now have to turn their attention to fighting the looming threat ahead. We close out the arc with Boruto looking up at Sasuke, who is trapped in the tree, and Boruto saying that Sasuke is going to have to wait just a little bit longer. What we're getting here with this conclusion to this homecoming arc is essentially we're learning that there came a time where Sasuke, who had once wanted to kill Boruto because of omnipotence, after Sarada was able to make him see reason, have Sasuke save Boruto, he is now ended up sacrificing himself, and it has resulted in Sasuke getting sealed away into that tree, his chakras being used to give birth to that Ten-Tails that goes by the name Hidari that Boruto just got into the battle with. And now we are transitioning away from this to now the Awakened Shinju arc, which we will end up covering that later on. But in the meantime, if you can't wait for that recap, feel free to check out the chapter reviews for Boruto 2 Blue Vortex. You want to start at chapter 5 in this playlist and continue all up to the current chapter, or consider checking out one of these videos from my Anime Explained channel where I discuss non-Naruto content.